Someone knocks on a grand set of doors and calls out for Eleonore-sama, saying they are coming in, and the doors creak slowly open. A dark-haired beauty pulls a blonde close amid drifting petals and murmurs Arx, asking where he has been, while he sweats and freezes at the sudden bang, having reincarnated as a background character whose Yandere villainess fell head over heels for him. Amid blooming flowers and scattered swords, this is the Celestia Kingdom, a wildly popular otome game, where among all its characters Eleonore was infamous for her outrageous misdeeds. Standing with his back turned, he narrates that in such a setting he, Arx Leefort, does not appear by name in any of the story branches, trailing off into an ominous in other words. High above a bustling crowd he stands small and alone on the cobblestones, mustering a quiet eye, as the narration finishes the thought, that he was just a background character. Against a stark black panel his silhouette lingers as he adds, almost too casually, that it is not like it really bothers him or anything. Sparkling labels tag his classmates, somehow smart, somehow strong, likes him for some reason, yet he barely remembers his past life, so the usual cheat of past life knowledge is off the table. A serene woman drifts among cherry blossoms and rice balls as he recalls he once lived in a country called Japan, though maddeningly his memories cover only this one game. Over a peaceful shot of a countryside house he explains that right now, in this world, he has no relatives or family, and that he is simply living a carefree life in the orphanage that took him in. He splays a hand toward his own face, eyes weary, and asks himself seriously why he was even reincarnated here. Eerie tentacles coil around his panicked younger self as he daydreams that a main character might wield amazing magic, or share a lively school life with the others. His profile hardens with sudden resolve as he insists that somewhere out there he might still run into a huge opportunity, even if he is just a powerless background character. Over a sweeping view of the village rooftops he resolves that for now he will just enjoy this world. Split across two frantic panels he trains with a wooden sword, whooshing through the air with a sharp ha as blades clang and someone cries yeah. He drives forward and lands a heavy thud against a much larger opponent, sword raised, breath ragged. A starstruck little kid gushes that Arx Nai-chan is amazing and asks whether he too could become like that if he trains, and Arx, caught off guard with a HM, beams back an of course. Against the dark his grinning face falters inwardly as he admits he cannot say it, that he only trained out of boredom since there are no online games here, and that is how he got strong. Eyes closed with a sheepish aha, all that training only made him strong enough to thrash monsters near the village, certainly not enough to ever become a knight. An older man in a cardigan smiles warmly and offers his congratulations, Arx, while Arx stands with his back to him. The man closes his eyes with a gentle grin as a nearby voice supplies the title director, the sound of clap clap drifting through the air. The old man rests a hand on his head and assures him he will make a fine knight someday, but Arx murmurs that it is impossible for a commoner like him to ever become one. He ruffles Arx with a fond pat, insisting someone this wise and strong can surely make it, quietly marveling how that little kid grew up so remarkably. Arx turns with a puzzled favor, and the man smiles gently, saying he actually has a favor to ask of him. Perched outside a grand mansion, his heart hammering bim, Arx sits stiff and sweating, utterly out of his element. He fidgets on the plush sofa and asks whether they are really supposed to be here, muttering that he feels so out of place. A door creaks open somewhere as a voice tells him there is someone who really wants to see him, and Arx echoes back a wary me. A striking long-haired count introduces himself as Adalbert Ancinous, the noble who governs this region, apologizing that he is a bit late. Against a black panel Arx stammers his own name, "My name is Arx Leefort," his mind short-circuiting on the word's account. The count clasps hands with the old man, remarking so this is the boy they spoke about, and the old man beams that yes, he may have some flaws, but he is an extremely capable child. Sweating in his seat, Arx reels that a high-ranking noble is speaking to him directly, wondering just what he could want, while the count says he has heard of his achievements and has called him here for a very important favor. The count laces his fingers and gently addresses him as Arx-kun, asking whether he would become a friend for his daughter, and Arx freezes on the word friend. Back turned, Arx races through it, that the count summoned an orphan just to befriend his daughter, dreading she has some rotten personality or strange illness. Rubbing his chin, Arx pauses with a ha, muttering that now that he thinks about it, the name Ancinous. The count sets down his teacup with an easy smile and calls out for Eleonore to come in. A dark-haired girl in a gothic dress steps forward with a soft curtsy, introducing herself as Eleonore Ancinous and saying it is a pleasure to meet him, while Arx chokes out a stunned. His face contorts in pure horror as it clicks, Eleonore Ancinous. the villainess who relentlessly harassed the protagonist out of sheer malice, the one setting up curses and worse throughout the game. Sword planted in the dark behind her looming silhouette, Arx shudders at the realization that in the story she is the root of all evil and the final boss, and they want him to become friends with someone like that. The Count nudges the two together, suggesting they talk for a bit and declaring he is sure they will become good friends, while Eleonore offers a quiet excuse me, and Arx manages only a faint okay. The scene opens onto the Count's sprawling Gothic mansion and its immaculate rose garden. Gazing at the flowers, Arx admits the Count was right. This garden is wonderful and never gets boring, while Eleonore notes the gardener tends it regularly. Arx sits stiff and sweating beside her, groaning inwardly that this is so awkward. The Count cheerfully points out that Elin is the same age as him and asks isn't she cute, while Arx privately admits that is what the Count said, but sparks fly off his stunned face as he reels that no way a child could possibly be this expressionless. Half hidden behind his bangs, he concedes she really is cute, marveling he has never seen such a beautiful girl with black hair and black eyes. Amid a shimmer of sparkles, he thinks that as expected of a main character, even expressionless and unsociable, she leaves him hopelessly captivated. Walking the garden together, Arx mutters a distracted as she turns toward him. Eleonore tilts her head and quietly asks whether something is wrong. Her face falls into shadow beneath her bangs, a single stray highlight catching in her downcast eyes. Arx takes a step and calls out a careful Eleonore-sama, while she keeps her back to him. A pale hand reaches toward her over the flowers as she gently asks whether they should return to the mansion right away if he is not feeling well. She fixes him with a flat, knowing stare and says that as she thought, he does not want to be friends with her. His eyes blow wide as he chokes out a stunned She lays a hand to her chest and calmly states he does not want to associate with someone as accursed as her, and Arx stammers a helpless that's not, while she says yes, she understands. Eyes half-lidded and resigned, she tells him it is fine, he does not have to hide it, since everyone else felt exactly the same way. Two students whisper from the shadows that this is the girl from the Ancinous family, that she really is just like the rumors say. Standing small in her Gothic dress, the murmurs continue that if you are near her, misfortune will befall even them. Harsh light frames her as voices hiss that there is no light in her eyes, she must be a cursed child, black hair and black eyes, how terrifying. Eleonore recalls that some tried to curry favor with her because she was a noble's child. An adult recoils with a startled eek and a full-body startle at her mere approach. Dots of realization hang in the air as Arx stares, the cruelty of it slowly landing on him. Turning away in the garden, she says flatly that she is already used to it. A slender hand drifts down toward a rose as she explains she reacts this way because she knows that is the right way to react. The flower wilts the instant her fingertips brush it, and Arx jolts with a shocked twitch. Whooshing back in alarm, Arx recoils with a stunned interrobang as the withering spreads. Sweating in profile, he reels that no way, he has never seen power on this level before, wondering if this is Eleonore's magic. She tells him to look and see for himself, that everything she touches loses its color, withers and dies. The blackened stem crumbles to nothing as her words land, plants, and people too. Arx lowers his gaze and murmurs a quiet Eleonore-sama. She smiles a small, sad smile and asks whether he understands now, saying plainly that she is a cursed child. Watching her walk ahead, Arx thinks he never knew she had to endure such treatment, wondering if saving her now could change her fate. The memory of the Count's plea blazes back, would he become a friend for his daughter? Arx presses a glowing hand forward, thinking he never understood why he was reincarnated here, and wondering if it could have been for this. Feathers drift as he resolves to put the story back on track, so he can reach this world's happy ending, and to do that, the villainess looms beautiful behind his thoughts as he steels himself. He has to become close with her and avoid the bad end. Arx calls out a firm Eleonore-sama, vowing to reach a future where no one suffers, not even her, a conclusion where everyone ends up happy. He blurts that first of all he does not find her appearance creepy or anything to be feared in the slightest, leaving her with a startled "you're so." His whole face flushes as he cries that she is so unbelievably, so utterly beautiful. Eleonore jolts hard, stammering a bewildered her cheeks coloring in disbelief. Arx concedes he cannot completely deny her power could hurt someone, but insists there must be a better way to use it, while she trembles that it could end up hurting people. A withered flower springs back to life in full bloom at his urging. Petals scatter as Eleonore stares. While Arx declares that even if she does end up hurting someone, he will find a way to handle it. The two face each other over the roses as Arx asks her, "So please, would she be his friend?" Bursts of light frame her horror as she screams for him to stay away. The curse will spread, calling herself a devil. She recoils in the dark, a memory surfacing of a voice spitting the words filthy crow. Tears streak her face as the memory swallows her, a small figure lost in a swirling void. She cries out for her mother toward a looming, faceless silhouette. Trembling in the dark, young Eleonore confesses she was scared. She was so scared. An elegant blonde woman stands over the child as little Eleonore looks up and calls out a small mother. The blonde woman's face hardens as she looks down at her daughter, and she coldly tells the child not to look at her with those eyes. The young Eleonore trembles under that gaze, a small broken ah escaping her lips as she reaches out toward the mother who will not hold her. She presses her hands together and shrinks into herself, apologizing over and over, the words tumbling out like a prayer nobody will answer. Alone in the crushing dark, the tiny girl bows her head and whispers the cruelest apology of all, that she is sorry for ever having been born. Then a voice cuts through, calling out for Eleonore-sama, and her black eyes snap wide with a sharp gasp as the memory shatters. Arx leans over her, sweat beading on his brow and eyes shaking with worry, asking whether she is all right since she seemed trapped in a terrible nightmare. She blinks in dazed confusion, uncertain whether he truly means her, still half caught between the dream and the waking world. Off to the side, a maid quietly recalls how the two of them had talked together in Lady Eleonore's room. She continues explaining that afterward, the exhaustion had simply caught up with her and pulled her under into sleep. Arx beams at her with a bright easy grin, telling her that the tiredness must be exactly why such a bad dream had come to her. The maid glances over with faint concern, softly repeating her mistress's name as if unsure what she is witnessing. Eleonore stares blankly ahead, tears still wet and glistening on her cheeks, while Arx freezes in stunned silence at the sight. He flails backward in a flustered panic, arms flung wide and going awawoa, as she lets out a low trembling yu that swells toward a wail. She buries her face in her hands with a wet sniffle, and Arx jolts with a startled wordless gasp, hands hovering helplessly. Then he simply leans in and wraps his arms around her, drawing her sobbing form gently against him. He holds her close and pats her back with a steady soothing rhythm, pat, pat, letting her cry it all out. Cradled in his arms, her wet lashes lower and her heart begins to pound, a warm thump she has never felt before. The moment stirs a memory, and Arx recalls that he had asked her to be his friend, realizing with quiet wonder that now he already has one. Later, standing among the hedges under an open sky, she turns away and murmurs that being with someone like her will only make him unhappy, and he fires back that it is not true at all, that being with her would make him happy. She looks back at him with tired, sorrowful eyes, voicing the fear beneath it all, that she might end up hurting him too, Arx-sama. Arx meets her worry head-on, his eyes wide and earnest as he tells her that nobody goes through life without hurting someone. She grabs a fistful of his shirt, pleading in a small voice that he would be better off with someone other than her, and he lets the fabric squeeze tight in his grip. His eyes blow wide as the words spill out of him, that he only wants her, Eleonore-sama, no one else in the whole world. She lowers her gaze, flustered and searching, stammering out a fragile then hanging in the air. Clutching a bloomed flower to her chest, she finally lifts her head and softly asks him to take care of her, to please get along. The two of them settle down together on the bedside, a quiet calm falling over the room. But her face falls again, hidden behind her bangs, and another small apology slips from her lips. Arx throws his arms wide with a radiant grin, practically glowing as he begs her not to apologize, declaring that his chest is always available for her. She giggles behind the sound of a soft hee-hee, her expression melting into something warm as she tells him he really is kind. He gives her a gentle bashful smile, brushing it off by saying he was only doing what any friend would do. Her half-lidded eyes drift downward, a shadow of doubt creeping back across her quiet face. She confesses that she never had anyone she could even call an ally, let alone a friend, wondering whether she could ever measure up to being a friend like Arx-sama, while he assures her that is totally fine, really. He waves a reassuring hand from his spot on the bed, telling her that friendship takes many forms and that he just does whatever feels right to him. He lifts a finger to make his point, promising that if she makes more friends she will naturally figure things out. Beaming with dashing confidence, one hand raised and one on his chest, he proclaims that communication simply requires practice and repetition. Stars sparkle around her as she takes in his words, her wide eyes shining with quiet wonder. Both of them smile softly at each other, and she tells him that they should take things slowly after all. Arx gazes off with a calm knowing look, reflecting that life is much, much longer than they realize. A few weeks later, he stands with a deadpan, faintly exhausted expression, letting out a flat wordless. Eleonore looks up at him with a bright triumphant grin, cheerfully announcing look Arx-sama, that she used magic to make flowers bloom. Under a canopy of stars, Eleonore points up at the night sky and asks Arx whether the stars are not beautiful, while at a tea table she brightly offers him some pastries. His eyes fall shut and sweat beads down his face as he marvels inwardly that this is no way too big of a transformation from the girl she once was. She leans in close, cheeks flushed and brow furrowed, snapping a sharp "Geez, are you even listening?" Arx closes his eyes with a soft fond smile, thinking to himself that she is just so cute and he could not be happier. He scratches his head with a sheepish grin, apologizing that he had simply gotten lost in thought. She puffs up with a grumpy humph, repeating the words lost in thought back at him with a pout. Turning her face away, she presses him coolly, asking whether there is really something more important than the question she just asked. Arx bolts upright and throws his hands up in a flustered denial, insisting of course not. He reaches out and gently takes her small hand in his, the words to me trailing from his mouth. Sparkles bloom across the panel as he gazes at her with dazzling sincerity, declaring that there is nothing more important than her, Eleonore-sama. She blows out a sudden pff of laughter, and streaks of motion burst around them as the tender moment cracks wide open. His eyes narrow with dramatic flair, and he begins a grand proclamation that yes, believe it or not, he, Arx Leefort. The scene erupts into sparkles and swooning background girls crying out Kaya and Arx Kuin, as he strikes a thumbs-up pose and finishes his boast, that he is quite handsome. She reaches out and shoves his face away with a flat glare, cutting off his self-praise and demanding he hurry up and tell her what kind of clothes he likes. A knock sounds somewhere nearby as Arx turns thoughtful in profile, murmuring that his taste in clothes, well. The door opens to reveal Adalbert, a tall blonde man with a mustache and half-lidded eyes, who calmly asks Arx for a moment while Arx startles at the sight of Adalbert-sama. By the window, the young Eleonore stares out with wide teary eyes, a small voice calling father as her present self stands quietly below. Adalbert gestures for Arx to come along, apologizing to Elin and explaining that he needs to borrow him for a bit, while Arx shoots a worried glance back at her. Eleonore watches them go with a flat, drooping expression, thinking to herself that she is really angry now. She turns away with a cool humph, insisting that it does not matter to her, since Arx-sama has been absent-minded for a while anyway. Arx lets out a soft ah, his half-lidded eyes and gentle grin betraying that his mind has drifted somewhere far away again. He leans in close to Eleonore, their faces nearly touching, and a voice calls out her name, Eleonore-sama, drawing them both back. Blushing and wide-eyed, she takes in his words as he tells her that anything would look beautiful on her, if it is something she wears. Off by the doorway, Arx waves a cheerful wave toward the arms-crossed Adalbert waiting for him. Standing by the window, Adalbert informs him that the request he made earlier has been approved, and Arx bursts out a stunned really. Arx thanks him profusely as Adalbert confirms that starting next week he will be part of the Ancina's household. Adalbert's expression softens with a faint knowing look, and he adds a quiet but that hangs in the air. Clutching a bundle of folded clothes to his chest, Arx looks back at him and asks whether he is really okay with this. Down on the wooden veranda, Adalbert gestures apologetically that he could have at least provided him a place to stay, while Arx insists it saves him the trouble of commuting and that he is grateful just to have the job. Arx turns with a sharp earnest look, declaring firmly that he has no intention of exploiting Adalbert-sama's authority in any way. Adalbert studies him with heavy-lidded eyes, marveling that he could say something like that at only 7 years old. The word drifts down over Arx's bowed head, that it is truly admirable. Arx breaks into a bright laughing grin, guessing aloud that Adalbert recognized this in him, and that is exactly why he was picked to be her friend. He turns to go with a promise that he will do his very best, but before that, while Adalbert closes his eyes with a wry smile, murmuring that so he understood that much. Amid a soft scatter of sparkles, Arx adds that there is one thing he still wants to do. Back at the room, Arx freezes with a nervous sweat as a low ominous mew rumbles from Eleonore, and the thought strikes him that she is angry, really angry, drawing a small awe from him. A knock sounds at the door and a voice calls Eleonore-sama, while the small girl sits alone on the sofa, knees drawn up and waiting. She whips around with a furious rah, snapping that he is late and demanding to know whether talking to her father was really that much fun, all while she was left waiting and worrying. An impeccably dressed figure in a bow tie presses a hand to his chest and offers a graceful apology, saying he is sorry for being late, milady. Kneeling at her side with his head bowed, Arx formally announces himself that Arx Leefort is reporting for duty. Kneeling before her in his crisp attendant suit, Arx takes her hand and vows that from this day forward he shall serve as her attendant, while she stares down at him. Later, dressed formally and sweating a little, Arx frets to himself that this is his very first time attending a noble's party. Hunched over a desk buried in paperwork, he is interrupted by a maid announcing that the preparations for the hall are complete, Arx-sama. He turns to the freckled maid with a gentle thanks for her hard work, noting kindly that she seems quite tired. Slumped backward over his chair, Arx sighs that as expected, the day before the event always gets hectic. The maid Nanai beams with a warm flush, thanking Arx-kun and saying that because of him they are fully ready for tomorrow, while he smiles that this is good to hear. On a desk cluttered with papers and books, a lone note lingers, that for some reason, standing small among the towering adult staff, Arx reflects with quiet disbelief that despite being only 10 years old he is overseeing this entire party. He dashes down the hall with a stack of papers, stomp, stomp, as a voice cries out for Arx-kun to please come here for a moment. A flustered maid pulls him aside, waving a document and asking Arx-kun what she should do about this. His face falls into weary shadow as a mustached man clings to him crying "You are the boss now," and Arx marvels inwardly that he only offered some common-sense suggestions from his previous life, wondering how things ended up like this. Nanai clasps her hands with sparkling admiration, praising that Arx-kun really is amazing, not only full of great ideas but also taking the initiative to act himself, before adding a soft well. Arx's eyes go wide and intense, a slightly unhinged grin creeping across his face as he declares that it is all for Eleonore-sama. The memory of her surfaces, her shy delighted smile, as he thinks that this is their first extravagant party since they met and that he wants to celebrate it in a big way and see her happy face. He holds out a gloved hand with a cool sidelong look, resolving that for that, a little bit of fatigue is nothing. Beneath the starry sky he hoists up a rough hunk of rock, and with a command of create stone, shine, it blazes brilliantly to life. A maid gapes in disbelief, asking whether he was not tired and noting he even changed his clothes, while Arx shoulders a wooden club with a thwack and cheerfully announces he is off to do some training. Light shines from his palm pressed to his chest as he casts healing magic, revitalize, brushing off his exhaustion with a casual that. He turns back with a radiant closed-eyed grin, calling out "Let us do our best and see you tomorrow." Left staring after him, the pale-haired maid lets out a single flat, exhausted ha. Slash after slash rings out through the dark garden as Arx swings his blade alone, a small silhouette drilling his forms while faint light spills across the withered courtyard. He lowers his sword with a satisfied phew, wiping sweat with the back of his hand, and decides that this is enough training for today, unaware of the figure watching him. Eleonore stands among the roses, having been there for a little while now, and Arx freezes in shock as it dawns on him that Eleonore-sama has been watching, and he asks how long she has been standing there. He bows his head and apologizes profusely, sweating and grinning awkwardly, admitting that he honestly did not notice her presence at all. She warns him flatly that he will catch a cold, and Arx, still baffled, scratches his head and wonders aloud why she would come out here for that. The two lean close, faces almost touching, and she asks him plainly whether, even so, Arx will warm her up. Arx turns his back, a little flustered, and points out that surely warming herself is something she could do on her own, since there are spells that can start fires or raise body temperature. She insists on him regardless, protesting that he has been so terribly busy lately that he barely comes to see her anymore, while Arx weakly counters that they did talk the other day. Blushing, she declares that he belongs to her, then catches herself and fumbles, reasoning that since he is her servant he should always be right by her side. Arx offers a genuinely apologetic look, explaining that he would love to spend more time with her but he is simply far too busy right now. She turns her face away, murmuring that it is all for tomorrow, so that they can give her a magnificent celebration, while Arx bows his head against her hand, worn out. Softening, she concedes that if that is the case then it cannot be helped, since tomorrow is an important day after all, the two of them smiling wearily side by side. She looks down, a shadow of loneliness crossing her face, and falls into a quiet, wordless pause. Then she asks him softly whether Arx himself is not lonely, and he startles, stammering an before urging her that they should head back inside since it is cold. A question mark hangs over his head at her words, and wide-eyed, he begins to reassure her that not at all, Adalbert-sama has treated him well. He continues that Adalbert-sama and all the other servants have been very kind to him, while Eleonore stares back, unconvinced, against a field of little stars. Stomp, stomp, stomp. She marches off in a huff, telling him flatly to let's go and to please take care of things tomorrow, leaving Arx blinking and wondering if he did something wrong. She gives him the silent treatment with a pointed pause, and he tilts his head in confusion, until a sudden whoosh of her curse-cold air makes Arx sneeze. Later, at the grand party, a scarred blonde nobleman takes the microphone and addresses the ladies and gentlemen, thanking them all warmly for gathering here today. From the balcony above, little Arx stands stiffly in a formal suit beside another attendant, and a soft voice calls out to him, trailing his name. Adalbert's scarred face turns menacing as he leans in and orders Arx to eliminate all the pests who try to get close to Eleonore. Arx sweats and grins nervously, giving a strained yes in reluctant agreement to the Count's terrifying request. Down below, the two young attendants stand chatting near the balcony, and someone above lets out a curious HM at the sight of them. The boys straighten their vests, and one of them muses that those two look oddly familiar, like he has seen them somewhere before. Arx whips his head around with a turn, dread settling over his face as he mutters "oh no" under his breath. He peeks back over the railing, wondering if they are gone now and fretting over whether they noticed he was staring. The announcer's voice booms out, inviting everyone to welcome today's star, Eleonore, and to feast their eyes on her radiant figure. Eleonore descends in a stunning gown, long gloves and flowing hair, a vision of dark elegance framed by roses and swirling light. Arx stares, wide-eyed and stunned, as rose petals drift through the air and the gathered nobles gaze up at her transformed beauty. His eyes blow wide in astonishment while Nanai and the other maids escort Eleonore forward, her curse scattering pale fragments as she walks. The two catch sight of each other across the room, Arx flushing faintly and Eleonore's cheeks coloring pink beneath her elegant makeup. The crowd of nobles and maids gathers in their finery beneath the grand hall's pillars, all attention on the descending guest of honor. Arx closes his eyes, marveling inwardly at how much a child can grow in just 3 years, thinking to himself that Eleonore looked incredible. He gazes off to the side, reflecting that he is in charge of overseeing everything today, lamenting that it is a shame he cannot be right by her side. A freckled maid leans in close with a whisper, quietly calling out to Arx-kun to get his attention. Arx bolts down the corridor at a full sprint while a voice, revealed to be Nanai-san, calls after him asking what is wrong and whether he was not supposed to be guarding Eleonore-sama. Arx blinks in confusion with a question mark, and the freckled maid presses a hand to her cheek, stammering an about that. The scene cuts to Arx and Eleonore seated stiffly side by side in ornate chairs, Arx internally screaming how did it come to this while Eleonore trails off with a small sew. Sweating, Arx feels every gaze in the ballroom, certain that everyone must be wondering who that guy is, convinced he can feel their eyes drilling into him. Eleonore glances sidelong at him with quiet concern, observing that he looks pale and gently asking if he is okay. Arx sweats with dizzy spirals spinning over his head, and Eleonore asks him pointedly whose fault he thinks this whole situation is. She turns away with a sharp pout, beginning to explain that the reason is because of something, her cheeks puffed in displeasure. She lays it out that Arx is supposed to be her attendant yet he is never by her side, grumbling that there is no need for a mere servant to sit beside the guest of honor, echoing the objection she anticipates. Arx blinks in surprise, gently pointing out that it is kind of her but wondering what the guests will think, while Eleonore fires back that Arx is not just any servant. She looks down, her hair falling across her face, and continues with a quiet and besides, trailing off before her real point. Blushing faintly, she declares that Arx should be celebrated as well, the words hanging softly in the flower-strewn air. Arx's eye widens, and he echoes back a stunned "me too," not quite understanding her meaning. She confirms with a simple "yeah, just about," then turns to ask whether Arx is the same age as her. Arx stares back, faintly troubled as she points out that no one is celebrating his birthday. Is that not right? She reasons that since he is around 10 as well, and Arx, carrying a stack of linens, admits that he does not know his exact birthday, so he has never really had anyone properly celebrated. Arx looks at her, understanding dawning, and concludes to himself that this is probably what she meant. He reflects warmly that this is why she made him sit beside her as an equal guest of honor, marveling that she has such a beautiful heart. Gazing at the younger Eleonore in his memory, he thinks how amazing it is that the girl who was once so pessimistic has grown this much. He looks at her softened, smiling face and reassures himself that there is simply no way she could ever turn into the final boss. Turning his back, Arx acknowledges that her gesture is an honor, but something holds him back with a hesitant but. He gives her a gentle, genuine smile, telling her that just having her celebrate for him is more than enough to make him happy. Eleonore reels with a whoosh, her face flushing crimson and swirls spinning in her eyes as she stammers out an "I see." Arx presses his hands together earnestly, saying that for Eleonore's sake he wants to make sure this party goes off perfectly, while a blushing Eleonore fidgets and begins an then after this, with me. Arx steels himself with a worried hope that nothing happens, just as the two suspicious attendants from earlier resurface in the crowd, one recalling those two who disappeared earlier. A close shot lingers on Arx's uneasy face, his eyes sharp with dread as the threat quietly closes in. Eleonore beams brightly beside a sweating Arx, holding out a spoonful of dessert with a sparkle, asking whether Arx has tried this yet. Overwhelmed, Arx thinks that he is stuck as she cheerfully offers another bite, chiming in with an "oh, and this one too." He notes that on top of everything he is being stared at like crazy, the surrounding maids and guests watching the pair with keen interest. A blonde youth approaches, and Arx falters with a puzzled hang-on as the newcomer cuts in with a curt "hey." The confident blonde boy sweeps in with a grin, addressing her as Countess Eleonore Ancinous and boldly demanding that she dance with him. Arx's eye goes wide with recognition, the realization striking that it is that guy from earlier. His memory flickers to a character select screen bearing the boy's face, and it clicks that he remembers this face. Arx stares, mouth parting as the name surfaces, beginning with a stunned "you are." He identifies the smug young noble as Razor Kilmond, the Viscount's son. Arx breaks into a cold sweat, realizing that Razor is much younger than he was when the game originally started, which is why he did not notice him sooner. He recalls the character's profile, that Razor has a foul mouth and a violent personality but is extremely devoted to the protagonist, and that gap makes him really popular, while the real Razor sneers at him to beat it. Background extra. The dread crystallizes as Arx recognizes exactly what Razor is, one of the romance options from Celestia Kingdom. Razor strides across the floor and thrusts out his hand, demanding whether she did not hear him, repeating that he said he is going to dance with her. Eleonore turns her head slightly, processing his request, and echoes back a flat "dance with me." Arx and Eleonore stand side by side as Razor presses on with an "I see," well then, gearing up to ask again. Eleonore fixes him with a cold, unbothered stare and flatly refuses, leaving Razor to sputter a stunned "huh" with a deflating "meh." Razor reels back with a screeching "why" while Eleonore turns away with a dismissive "tch," the rejection landing hard. She glances back at him, icy and composed, explaining that is it not obvious, that she does not feel even the slightest desire to dance with him. Razor's face twists with fury as he snarls "how dare you," and Eleonore begins to add a "besides." Razor lunges and catches Arx's wrist mid-motion, yanking it toward Eleonore, the word "catch" marking the sudden grab as all three freeze. Razor flinches with a startled "gah" as Arx levels a cold, piercing glare at him, the boy sputtering a bewildered "wah" under the sudden pressure. Arx calmly grips Razor's wrist in return, introducing himself as Arx Leefort, Eleonore-sama's attendant, while Razor gapes with a "what the hell?" Razor wrenches free with a snap, snarling at Arx to know his place, servant. Arx holds firm, declaring that his job is to protect Eleonore-sama and that he intends to fulfill his duty, gripping tight with an ugh of strain. Razor grimaces and strains against the hold with a pained sweat beading as the servant refuses to yield. Arx urges him to please calm down, warning that if this situation escalates it will bring shame to his family, while Razor thrashes and protests that he is just asking her to dance, that is all, crying that this is brutality. Arx explains coolly that if a viscount's son were to harm the daughter of a higher-ranking noble, or her servant, it would be a problem, would it not, as Razor shrieks a furious "why?" Razor freezes, pressing a hand to his head with a sigh and a slow, dawning "huh" as the logic sinks in. Arx presses his advantage, offering that if Razor withdraws now he will not take this to his master, and privately sizes him up, thinking this guy is not an idiot, just a spoiled brat, and for a 10-year-old this is about right. Razor relents with a grudging "fine, I get it," and Arx exhales a quiet, relieved phew. But then Razor's mouth curls into a dangerous smirk, signaling that he is not done after all. Razor suddenly whirls and lands a hard smack across Arx, the impact catching him wide-eyed with a stunned interrobang. Arx staggers, mouth open in shock, and demands to know just what Razor is. Razor looms with wounded noble pride while Arx, reeling, marvels whether this guy is for real and groans inwardly what a pain. Razor raises his hand again with a whoosh, roaring how dare Arx disgrace him. As the blow descends, Arx calmly raises his palm and casts a spell, the word sleep glowing in his hand right before Razor's face. Razor's eyes go heavy-lidded and drowsy, the magic taking hold as he sways on his feet. The freckled Nanai appears in a fluster, and Arx, gently lowering the slumbering Razor, tells her to please call Kilmansama and Adalbertsama, to which she stammers a weiss as the Viscount's son snores away. Eleonore comes trotting over with an anxious cry of Arx, hurrying toward him where he stands over the sleeping boy. Arx looks up at her with a warm, reassuring smile, asking Eleonore-sama whether she is hurt. Eleonore hurries across the vast hall toward him, her voice ringing out that he should not worry about her, he should worry about himself. Arx stands small and steady in the distance, watching her come. He turns his gentle face toward her and asks, quite calmly, if she is okay. His cheek carries the faint mark of the slap, but his expression stays soft and unbothered. She reaches up with a black-gloved hand and lifts his face, insisting that he look, it is swollen. He only murmurs that it is no big deal, a small spark of contact passing between them. Relief floods out of her in a soft breath, and she tells him she is so glad he is safe. He closes his eyes and smiles, warmed straight through by how openly she worries for him now. Meanwhile, a memory surfaces, an earlier moment where he balanced a tray of glasses as a fellow attendant asked whether Arx-kun was all right. He had answered, yes, thank you very much, ever the composed servant. Back in the present, a figure bows deep to the floor, apologizing profusely and begging forgiveness for a brother's behavior. The Dajiza presses low, the words tumbling out that she is terribly sorry. Arx stands blinking down at the prostrated girl beside the collapsed Razor, waving it off with an easy "oh, do not worry about it." Inside his head the astonishment lands hard, a full Dajiza, seriously. She keeps her head bowed as he leans down, and he gently urges her to please raise her head. His profile is patient, a little flustered by all this apologizing. His inner narration clicks into recognition as he addresses the newcomer as Caesar-sama. This is Caesar Kilmand, he notes, and to his private alarm the boy is also one of the game's love interests. The rapid-fire profile continues in his mind, that Caesar always ranked at the top of the popularity polls, the gentle soft-spoken prince archetype. Having such a troublemaking little brother must be genuinely rough on him. Caesar keeps apologizing, truly he is deeply sorry, he is so sorry, the words repeating in earnest. Arx watches, one eye narrowing in dry sympathy at the sheer volume of contrition. Caesar explains, having been spoiled rotten, his little brother seems to operate under the assumption that he is entitled to anything he wants. Behind him Razor sprawls unconscious across a sofa, out cold from the sleep spell. Arx pieces the picture together and observes that Razor-sama actually wanted to dance with Eleonore-sama after all. Caesar admits, with weary honesty, a blaze of exasperated realization erupts as Arx wonders what he is, a grade schooler. Then the sheepish correction hits, well, age-wise he actually is a grade schooler, but that is beside the point. Caesar sighs out the whole sorry origin, that he only said his brother should ask out any girl who catches his eye, and now look what happened. His eyes stay shut in gentle regret at the disaster his advice bred. A quiet beat hangs in the air, an ellipsis and a soft glance as Arx takes it all in. The curtained window frames the loaded pause between them. Arx's thoughts drift to the sleeping culprit as he wonders what is going to happen to Razor-sama now. Razor lies peacefully knocked out below, oblivious to his fate. Caesar answers the unspoken question gravely, that while much depends on Adalbert-sama's discretion, exile is the least his brother can expect. His profile is sharp and serious, the weight of consequence settling in. The word detonates in Arx's mind and his composure finally cracks, blurting an internal as in actual exile. His eye goes wide, sweat beading, the calm servant mask slipping for once. The tension breaks into a small awkward aftermath, a faint ah and a trailing ah as a little crown-shaped mark pops overhead. Two tiny figures sit across a table, the scene deflating into quiet comedy. Caesar clears his throat with a sharp ahem, murmuring a strained "I see" as he composes himself. Inside, Arx panics that this is bad, really bad, that he got way too excited hearing a word you only ever hear in fantasy. Razor snores away, zzz, sprawled and dead to the world. Arx reflects that even though the boy is only 10, in this world that counts as somewhat of an adult, So a dark thought slips out that he would be better off if he just did not wake up, and Caesar wearily concedes you could call it fair. Caesar presses a hand to his mouth, his profile soft and thoughtful, alone but hanging in the air. The pause stretches, heavy with everything left unsaid. He looks off with quiet composure as the narration lands its verdict, that at this point the Viscount Razor Kilmond route is officially closed now. The canonical love interest has just been written out entirely. Arx stares wide-eyed, a bead of realization forming, his mind turning over the enormity of it. He wonders whether this world is starting to diverge from the game's main story. A hopeful thought glows against the shimmering dark, that if the story can bend this far, maybe Eleonore's fate can change too. The wish hangs there, tender and fragile. Eleonore comes rushing back, hair flying with a crack of movement, her mouth open in worry. She calls out his name, Arx. She hurries toward him asking if everything is okay, noting that he was gone for some time. Concern radiates off her small figure as she closes the distance. He beams and assures her that he is perfectly fine, closing his eyes in a warm smile. He adds, lightly, that besides, there were witnesses. He rubs the back of his head sheepishly beside a bowing Caesar, explaining that it just took a while for them to apologize, that is all. The two boys make an oddly matched pair against the tall windows. Eleonore's face fills the panel, a soft fume of relief escaping her. She murmurs a quiet "I see," the tension draining from her. Then Caesar turns to her, his profile grave, and says he is sorry. He confesses that he cannot believe he ended up ruining her birthday party. Eleonore whirls on him, flustered and indignant, demanding to know why he is apologizing. She insists the fault lies entirely with that bandit of a man and his outrageous behavior, and somewhere off-panel Razor registers the word bandit. She stands stiff and downcast, blaming herself instead, admitting she was too naive. She laments that she should have been able to prevent this from happening in the first place. Arx lowers his eyes with a rueful sweat, spiraling into his own regret, wishing only that he had remembered sooner. He tells himself that if he had properly checked the guest list, he could have removed Razor before even sending the invitation. Eleonore stands with her head bowed, hair curtaining her downcast face, and softly speaks his name, Arx. The word drifts across the quiet, weighted with feeling. A close shot catches the hem of her gown and a single poised heeled shoe stepping forward. The frilled skirt sways with her movement. She reaches up and cups his face in both gloved hands, and Arx freezes, eyes blown wide in flustered shock. The sudden tenderness catches him completely off guard. Gazing up at him among the sparkles, she tells him that as long as she has him, Arx, she does not care about anyone else. The confession lands soft and absolute, her cheeks faintly flushed. Arx can only gape, a stunned gasp escaping, a little crown popping overhead amid a swirl of tiny cartoon dogs. The moment tips fully into flustered romantic comedy overload. Eleonore fidgets shyly, gloved hands pressed together, cheeks warm as she stammers that besides, to say the party is ruined or something. She insists, flustered, that they do not know that yet. She suddenly spins to face him, a whirl of skirts, and Arx blinks out a startled "huh." The twirl catches him mid-thought, the mood shifting again. A tight close-up frames her eyes, soft and earnest and fixed on him, as she begins a hesitant "would you?" The unfinished question hangs in the air, brimming with quiet anticipation.